Hello everyone, welcome to another Python tutorial series, and in this video I'm going to talk about 5 common mistakes Python beginners make. So I've been learning Pythons for several years and I've tutored a lot of students. Here are 5 common mistakes I see Python beginners make. Number 1, they don't know where their working directory is. So the working directory is where your Python code is developed and saved. When you develop your code, you need to know where your working directory is. For example, when I develop code on this computer, the working directory is right here, Michael. When you have assets for the code such as images, sound files, you'll need to make sure that they are under your working directory. If not, you'll need to specify where these assets are located. Otherwise, your code won't run or won't find the assets that are used in your code, and you'll have errors when running the code. So this is my assets folder, which I use to keep my assets such as my images and my sound files. And it is easy to access because it is in my working directory. Number 2, giving a wrong file name to your code. The rule of naming your code is quite loose in Python. Basically, you can name your file anything you want. But one thing you need to keep in mind is that you do not name your code with a Python module name. Doing this will mess up your code and it is pretty hard to debug. For example, if you want to use the Pygame module to develop a game, the first thing you'll need to do is to import the Pygame module, which is the module that you installed using the pip command. But if you have a file named pygame.py in your working directory that you created by mistake, then when you import the Pygame module, it will import this file instead of the real Pygame module that you have installed. Keep in mind that a Pygame file with the extension .py is a module. So in this ruleblock.py game, we import the Pygame module and use it. If I run this code, I have a working game right here. Now if I close out of that, I also have a hello world file in the same directory, which just prints hello world. But if I change or rename this file to Pygame, and I go back to this roadblock code, if I try to run it again, there is now an error. There's an error because we renamed this hello world file to Pygame, which is a module that we use. So this just shows that we can do that. I'll change it back to hello world. And if I try to rerun this code again, now it works. Number 3, incorrectly using the input command. So the input function is a very useful tool that Python programmers often use to input information from the keyboard. For example, when we make games in your engine, we often use keyboard to control the player through the input function. One thing we need to keep in mind is that any information you input through the input function is a string. If you want to use that as something other than a string, you need to do the variable conversion or casting. For example, if I want to make a calculator in Python to calculate the multiplication of two numbers that I input from the computer, here's what I would do. So in this hello world file, I'm going to multiply two numbers together from input. So I'll have a num1 is equal to an input, and the message will be enter the first number. Then I'll convert num1 into a float. Similarly, I'll do the same thing with num2. So enter the second number. Num2 is equal to float num2. And then print num1 multiplied by num2. So if I save and run this, I input 3 and then 9, I have 27. And the reason I have 27 is because I first input 3 and 9 as a string, and these two lines convert that into a float. Now what I would do if I did not include these two lines and I decided to run this again, four and 5, notice how there's an error, and this is because when I input 4 and 5, those are inputted as strings, and you can't multiply two strings together. To actually multiply 4 and 5, you have to convert them to numbers or floats. So number 4 is forgetting the parentheses when calling a function that has no parameters. So here's the syntax of a function in Python. And when calling a function that has no parameters, we still need to include the parentheses, otherwise it won't work. For example, in this game, roblox.py, every time there's a collision, the crash function will be called and the scoreboard will be updated. No arguments will be passed to the function, but we still need to include the empty parentheses when calling it. For example, if we look at this crash function right here, I don't take any parameters in this function. But when I call it, I still need to add in these two parentheses at the end to signify that it is a function. And number 5, typos in the init function in a class. I don't think this would be a problem, but the fact is it is one of the most commonly made mistakes by the students I've tutored. The correct syntax of the init function is in a class is def and then 2 underscores init 2 underscores parentheses. So right here, you want to note that there are 2 consecutive underscores before and after the init, and there's a space after the def. While a lot of students will either forget the space or forget it is 2 underscores and not 1. So this is the end of this video. If you have any comments, please put them at the comment section. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.